guys, welcome back to another video. Happy Friday. Today we're going to talk about the engine mount stuff and what we did to actually get this transmission out. Stay tuned. Okay, so the engine mount has been attached. The bolt I got from Ace Hardware ended up working. I didn't need to cut off the old nuts and then put a new one on and all that kind of stuff. With that being said, that still hasn't fixed the issue. I think the issue now is the actual passenger side axle. So when the transmission blew, this axle snapped. And that's actually what spun around and put a hole in that transmission. Looking back at some video, I basically jacked the car up, recorded it, put some load on the engine and stuff. And you can actually see that the passenger side axle kind of sways a little bit back and forth. And I think that's what's causing it. So here's a clip of what that looks like. Now I ordered the new axle already. I'm still waiting for it. It's gonna be here Monday. It was supposed to be here between yesterday and the 14th, so we'll just see whenever it comes up. But according to FedEx, it looks like Monday would be the latest it should be here. Now let's go over some of the things you need to do to go ahead and do a automatic transmission swap. For those who might be confused, we did not go to the all-wheel drive. We did just replace it with another Scion XB front-wheel drive transmission out of cost and time, really. Basically, if I wanted the all-wheel drive transmission, it was going to take a few weeks for it to even be delivered because it wouldn't have been local, and it would have cost about $800. I was actually able to get the transmission in here for $245 with a warranty, and it has less miles than I currently have on mine. Now, there's a couple things you have to do regardless. On the engine side, there is a little plastic cover, and that plastic cover actually hides the bolts for the torque converter. So as you can see, we have these different bolts right here, or this is where the bolts go in, and you take that cover off, and you go ahead and unbolt these. Now these connect to the flex plate. So once you undo that, that will physically disconnect the transmission from the engine on that side, and then you just have the bolts that go around here. Another thing is the starter. You make sure you disconnect the starter, all the wiring and all that kind of jazz before you can take it out. Now this needs to be rewrapped, so ignore that, and the engine bay is still dirty from when the radiator blew up. But you gotta take your battery out. You might want to take your cold air intake out if it's in the way. All these wires right here, there's a whole bunch of them, different sensors. You want to make sure you disconnect all those. And on the transmission below, there's some more sensors, and then there's a shift linkage. So you make sure you get all of that disconnected. Now by this time, the vehicle would be jacked up, but do you see that little bracket right here? There's two of them. Now there's one that runs on the driver's side and then on the passenger side. After you have the vehicle jacked up and on jack stands, you're going to want to go ahead and disconnect those. Now to disconnect those, there's two bolts on each side of it, and then there's also part of the splash shield in there. You'll have to disconnect it, but you can drop that bar and the one on the other side. Now this is why it's important you use jack stands. There's a little black bar right here. This is part of the core support. This runs all the way across the front. Now this also has two bolts on each side. Once you have this disconnected, that's going to drop that front piece. Now if you're not familiar, on the front of that little black, or on the back of that black bar, is a jack point. And that jack point actually goes below the transmission and engine. So by getting that disconnected and removed, it clears up that part of the engine. Now the next thing is you need to take off the axles. So go ahead and take off your wheels. And on the lower control arm, there are three 17mm bolts. Go ahead and you get those disconnected. Lower the control arm and lift the knuckle up at the same time, and then that will clear that part. Now at that point you can actually lift the knuckle up, and then the axle will come out. Now there's an axle that you need to take off, of course, but that's how you get that portion. Now the axles use a thing called a C-clip. On the end of a spindle, you'll see when you get your replacement axle, if you do replace it, is it has the splines, and there's a little C that clips on the end. That helps keeps it locked into the transmission. So you're gonna have to get a pry bar and actually pry that off of the transmission. So at this point we have the vehicle jacked up. You have the three support bars right here disconnected. You had the battery disconnected, all the sensors. You had the wheels off, the axles disconnected, and then you have all the engine to transmission bolts off. At that point, the transmission's gonna fall off. Now, obviously, the best thing you can do is have a transmission jack, but if you can't, a regular jack with a block on it or something of that matter will work just fine. Now, I did actually end up disconnecting some of the coolant hoses. I took out the header and S-pipe and various other things to make clearance. This is not the proper coolant hose, matter of fact. So the reason that we have this going on here is there's a little plastic piece here that normally goes like this with a Y, and it splits off. Now that piece actually broke. No one's carrying a replacement locally, so I ordered one online. I'm just waiting for it to come in, but this is the temporary solution to at least get the car running and driving if the engine mount wasn't the issue. So once we get that, we can go ahead and properly replace that. But coolant flows, the car doesn't overheat, so this is okay for a temporary fix. And then of course, like, this is for the ECU in the bag, so this needs to be rewired. And we need a battery tie down. We need to rewrap the header and S-pipe, and then we need to get the proper plastic fitting for this little piece here. We need to clean the engine bay. Like, the valve cover is absolutely disgusting. It's just coolant sprayed everywhere. So overall, this was my first front-wheel drive transmission swap. I've only pulled out transmissions for rear-wheel drives like the 300ZX, stuff like that. And so this had a whole bunch of new challenges for me. But I didn't use YouTube, I didn't Google anything, I just kind of winged it and just wanted to see how far I can get without any assistance. And yes, it did take some time for sure. Little tiny things I got confused about, like, I was wondering why this wouldn't come off or the way I thought it did, whatever the case was, but we got it off. Old transmission's still there. You can do this. If I can do this, you can do this. Honestly, a transmission jack would help tremendously with something like this, but it is possible to use a regular floor jack. Now I'm using a Pittsburgh 2 or 3 ton low profile jack, so it's not just one of those tiny little jacks. This is a big hefty jack. But that's really about it for today's video. Like I said, the axle's coming in, so once that is in, we'll go ahead and we'll jack it all up and we'll go through that process to get all going there. But I want to thank every single one of you who continue to watch these videos and who have subscribed and like and comment. Again, if you're not subscribed, please consider it. We are going for that 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and then we are doing a $200 cash giveaway. And for whoever is not on my Instagram, here are some pictures of what the wide body could look like. Now, again, this is just quick tape up. Obviously, it could be better. We're just trying to see how it looks. And again, with the broken fender here, it's not going to be ideal about what it looks like. Again, that's it for today's video. I'll see you guys around next week. Stay safe and have yourself a great day.